One of the issues that you probably saw a lot of from my comments, you've probably seen in plenty of other places as well, whenever the way that Futo is doing things is brought up, the term source available is used. And that term is. Personally, I'm not a fan of it. I think the source available does not really fit with what you guys are doing. But why do you think that term is used so much? And why do you think that it doesn't fit with what Futo's goals are?
Well, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the origin of source available is actually it's kind of like an insult that was it came from like the Free Software Foundation, like fans actually. I maybe
I
I'm
don't know
wrong
the
on this,
origin of
but
the term, actually.
I'm pretty sure that this like term somewhere in its origin was kind of just like here's the other people, here's our opponents kind of thing. And we're not trying to be that. We're not trying to be an opponent. We're not trying to be proprietary software. This is the other thing about it is like it's such a big catch-all term that it applies to nearly anything and
Right.
everything, and it doesn't really help people to understand what it is that we're doing. Like if you hear source available, you can walk away thinking basically anything because it's kind of like a meaningless term that applies to almost any software where this where the source is available, which can mean like proprietary things. It can mean source paywall. It can mean all sorts of different crazy things. Um, it can even it's such a catch-all term that I mean it applies to all free software. It applies to all of open source software. It applies to everything, and the goal of a term should be to help you understand where we stand. It shouldn't confuse you further
Right.
um, about what our position is or what you can do or can't do with our software. And I
Mhm.
think that it does that. It confuses people more, actually, and that's why we're kind of like not interested in using that kind of language for our own software, and why we're trying to invent our own term, kind of in the same sense that all these other companies have invented their own license structure. We're trying to invent a term that can be generic enough that other people can use it, but that like firmly says exactly where we stand that we can point people to.
I think the issue with source available is it also has a lot of baggage with it, where yes, does certainly cover open source and free software as well, but usually people who are aware of the term, the first thing they think about is like those corporate projects where maybe like a part of it, maybe like a couple of modules are source available, but you can't actually compile the entire application. Where like
Yes.
yes, you can see the code, but you can't really distribute it and things like that.
Yeah. I think that there's this entire camp of these sorts of things, and our thing it's very clear, you know, like client source is all available. Anything running on the server that's required is all available. Like
Mhm.
everything is available, and you can just compile it if you want. It's that simple.
Right, right. Because that's a big problem we see with a lot of spaces where you may have a license to the software, but if the server ever disappears, like in some
Yes.
pieces of software, it just becomes useless then.
Yes, and so we explicitly put this across all of our documents, all of our definitions. Is that if there is any server side code, it has to be made available alongside any client code for any project that we fund
Mhm,
internally, anyway.
mhm. Right. Okay.
This
So
is the thing about these. Like, there's individual licensees.
mhm,
Like I said, like some of our projects are BSD, some of our projects are AGPL or whatever. But
mhm, mhm.
we kind of want them to adhere roughly to our set of principles and standards, like, you know, and these are wider than what is included in the license, like
Mhm, mhm.
no ads, no crypto scams, no privacy violations, you know, no intrusive telemetry. Like telemetry, if it exists, should always be opt out, and it probably shouldn't exist for most projects.
Do you mean opt? So it's on by default and then opt out, or do you mean opt in?
Oh no, no, no. Well, for one thing, most of our projects don't have any anyway,
Sure,
so this is
sure.
kind of a moot
Yeah.
point. But if there is like some telemetry, it should only be opt-in.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you said opt out. Yeah.
don't
No. Just
don't
wanted
pin me
just
on
wanted to
that.
confirm that
I
because that's
it's
something people will definitely crucify you on.
yeah, no.
Okay, okay, just had to make sure there. Cool.
Yeah, no, sorry. It's yeah.
As I said, people are very obsessed with semantic arguments in this space, and if
Yes,
you
I got
if
to be
you
very
misspeak,
careful about what I'm saying for sure.
yeah, look, well, if I notice something, I'll ask you about it. But there are
Okay.
some people who are not good faith actors who will definitely jump on any
Yes,
misspeak you
like
say.
that would be such a silly one too, because we basically have no telemetry across any of our apps.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, that well, I assume if telemetry was done, it would also be just the minimal set of data needed rather than what like a Google approach is, which is get
Most of our
everything
apps are
possible.
privacy oriented,
Yeah.
so like there's certain things that are necessary, like you know like there's certain things that you get just from having a server
Yeah,
running
you
the
you get
software,
you
like
it,
daily user counts, and
well,
that's
yeah, basic
basically
things
what we
like
have.
people will freak out about IP addresses, but if you connect to a server, that server knows your IP address. Like that's just how it
Yeah,
goes.
that's if you want to use Tor or VPN, be our guest. Like,
Mhm.
don't. That's not our problem necessarily.
Right. Right, but the point I was getting at is like the goal is not to be like, collect every single bit of data possible, all of your cookies, all of your location data, everything that you could possibly scoop up, and then like, create user profiles on every single person.
No, we don't. No, nothing like that at all
Mhm,
whatsoever.
mhm.
And I mean, we've given Tor a grant. If you want to, if you don't want us to see your IP when you connect to one of our things, use Tor. We just funded it. Like.
Mhm, mhm. So in my video, I brought up the term fair code because you guys hadn't like brought up the term source first yet, so I was just bringing up things that sounded like similar to what you guys were trying to do. So why go for a whole new term as opposed to working with something like fair code, which already does exist, and giving that sort of more attention? Because I do feel like that does address most of what you guys are interested in, but yeah, what do you think about that?
I I honestly, we think what we're doing aligns with what they're attempting, but we aren't actually sure. Like we looked over this a couple times. Um, we're definitely open to reaching out and collaborating with them because it definitely is an interesting project. Like we don't see any issues with
Mhm.
it. We were really writing the source first stuff for ourselves and our users.
Mhm.
So we wanted a clear description of what we're trying to do, and we think this is a pretty clear description overall. Um, and so we were kind of doing it just as much for ourselves as other people
Mhm.
to like make sure everyone internally knows where we stand also on these
Right.
kinds of issues. Because there's some confusion between some people here. Uh, about like what open source is. Like a lot of people here, like some of the people here working here are like over 50, and they're just like, I did open source in 2002. The OSI didn't exist. What is this?
Mhm.
Like there's a lot of differing understanding uh, of what is what these terms are. And
Right.
so we're kind of just like, let's just get down exactly what we're thinking so we're all on the same page and we all have something that we can agree on.
Mhm.
um, Oh, the other thing worth mentioning is that we trademarked the term source first.
Mhm.
We've This has been a long time running thing. Like we have the trademark filing started going back several months. It's
Okay,
just
so you guys
we
had been working on it for a while. It just you'd been using the term open source in the meantime.
Yeah, well, we saw that there was confusion, but we kind of this is a company that is like engineering oriented and developing oriented. Like our goal here is to make products, and a lot of the business stuff here, kind of can fall by the wayside, especially the little details like this.
Mhm.
Like, why did our license have weird clauses in it? Because we left a temporary license up while we were building out the app. um, well, there's all sorts of little things like this that fall through the cracks when you're doing a startup, or here you're doing like several startups simultaneously. It's a lot to deal with,
Mhm.
and this is like a plan that we've had for a while, but it kind of just like fell by the wayside in terms of like more important things like developing the products that we're building.
Right.
And everyone here likes to develop code, I would say. And so uh, a lot of people here don't necessarily want to spend hours debating licensees and meetings. They just want to get back to like making good code.
Mhm.
And so that's partially why this uh, is only coming up now when we're getting a lot of people talking about it.
Mhm.
So we thought this would be as good a time as any to like roll out this plan.
Okay.
And the thing is, with Faircode, I don't believe something similar exists for Faircode or the OSI for that matter. So we have the ability to enforce source first through the trademark.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so this is a set of principles that if people use it, it'll have some teeth to it. Like we can actually enforce it.
Yeah, the OSI. Well, they have a trademark on open source initiative approved. I think it's approved. Yeah. But it's either approved or licensed. One of those two terms.
Yeah.
But because open source had the term, they were very much part of popularizing it, but the term had been in use. I think you can track it back to sometime in the 80s. So you yeah, when it's a term like that, it's basically impossible to grab a trademark on it unless it's a very specific, like very minor niche, and it's just we're never going to get that on software.